Hello friends, this is Grief speaking, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the graphic novel adaptation of Coraline. I'll be honest, I've never read the original book, but like many people, I'm a huge fan of the stop-motion animated feature by Leica Studios, so I really found it refreshing to see a different take on the story in a completely different style. This version, by P. Craig Russell, features a realistic art style that makes things have more of an uncanny valley feel. The whole thing has an eerie and unsettling vibe, and there's some moments that are straight up terrifying. So whether you've never heard of Coraline or want to see it from a different perspective, this comic is for you. This is Coraline Explained. So let's get into chapter 1. After some creative opening credits spread across a couple of pages showing a family moving into a new home, we're hit with an ominous first page. Coraline discovered the door shortly after they moved into the house. A young girl stands peeking into the room beyond, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We get a description of the huge old house, including the overgrown garden with large trees surrounding it. Coraline's family don't own the house, only a part of it, and there were other people who lived there. Miss Pink and Miss Forcible live in the flat below Coraline's. They're both old and live with a number of Highland Terriers. Apparently, they were famous actresses once. We see Coraline talking to Miss Pink through the window, who keeps calling her Caroline. An irritation Coraline probably deals with a lot. In the flat above lives a crazy old man with a big mustache. He tells Coraline that he's training a mouse circus and also mistakenly calls her Caroline. She assumes he's just making up the stuff about the circus. The day after they moved in, Coraline went exploring through the garden that didn't hold much in the way of interest. There's a dilapidated tennis court, a rockery that was all rocks, and smelly toadstools. There's also a mysterious well. Miss Pink and Forcible were quick to warn her not to go near the well, and told her how dangerous it was, but this only made Coraline want to find it more. When she finally did, it was covered by some old boards. Coraline dropped some pebbles through the cracks and counted until she heard them hit the water below. It must be pretty deep because she counts to 49. She also explored for animals, but only found a snakeskin, a rock that looks like a toad, and a toad that looks like a rock. She also found a black cat who would run away whenever she got near it. Now Coraline continues to go out exploring every day despite the cold weather until finally it begins to rain and her parents tell her to stay inside. She tries her best to keep entertained watching all her videos and reading all of her books. I noticed that there's real media here, by the way, like My Neighbor Totoro on VHS. Anyway, bored as hell, Coraline visits her father in his study, where he doesn't really give her the time of day. She begs him to let her go out and explore more, but he says no and tells her to explore the flat instead. He instructs her to count all the windows and doors and to find the hot water tank, but mostly to leave him alone to work. She asks if she can go into the drawing room. This is where they keep all the expensive and uncomfortable furniture Coraline's grandma left them, and her father says yes as long as she doesn't touch anything. So Coraline goes exploring the flat, discovering the water heater and counting all the windows and doors. There were 14 doors, 13 of which opened and closed, and the 14th in the drawing room was locked. Coraline asks her mom about it, and she just tells her it doesn't go anywhere. To prove it, she grabs a key from the kitchen and unlocks it, only to show that there's a brick wall closing it up. I guess it used to lead to the empty flat next door, but when the house was split up into apartments, they closed it off. Coraline's mother doesn't even bother locking it again since it doesn't go anywhere. That night, Coraline's father makes a gross looking stew that she finds disgusting, and after she crawls into bed, she can't get to sleep. Then she hears a scratching sound. She gets up to investigate and follows the noise down the hall. We get a shadowy flash of what looks like a rat running through the dark until it leads Coraline all the way to the door in the drawing room, which strangely is left open. There's still only brick on the other side, and she closes it, wondering how it got open in the first place. Finally falling asleep, she dreams of black shapes in the dark, whispering and whining, speaking a strange rhyme. We are small, but we are many. We are many, we are small. We were here before you rose. We will be here when you fall. Chapter 2. In the morning, it finally stopped raining, but thick white fog surrounds the house. Still, Coraline is determined to do some exploring and ventures out into the mist. However, after 10 minutes of walking, she finds herself right back where she started at the house. The old man upstairs greets her and says that the mice don't like the mist. It makes their whiskers droop. He says the mice have a message for her. Don't go through the door, and asks if it means anything to her. She shrugs and the old man laughs it off off, explaining how the mice get things wrong sometimes. For instance, they called her Coraline instead of Caroline. How silly. Bored again, Coraline asks her mother what to do. She seems bothered and tells Coraline to draw something, so she tries to draw the mist, and after a few minutes just has a blank page with the staggered letters spelling mist in the corner, something her mother doesn't find as amusing. After this, she tries to open the strange door in the drawing room again, but it was locked once more. Next, she tries to get some attention from her father, but he just tells her to go bother Miss Pink and Forcible instead. She goes downstairs and visits the old women, who offer her some tea and start having an argument they seem to have had for ages. Eventually, one of the women offers to read Coraline's tea leaves and tells her she's in grave danger. The other woman backs it up, but neither knows specifically what the danger is. Miss Pink then says that she has something that might help her and reaches into an old jar, pulling out several odd items, one of which was a strange stone with a large hole through the middle, and Miss Pink tells her that they can be good for bad things sometimes. Coraline takes the rock and tells them goodbye. Later, she looks out at the fog through her window, clutching the stone and seeming somewhat excited about the supposed danger she might be in. Chapter 3. The next day, the fog vanished and the sun came out. Coraline's mother takes her into town to buy her new school clothes, dropping her father off at the train station along the way, as he has business elsewhere. She ignores Coraline's more interesting choices of clothing, like bright green gloves or boots shaped like frogs, and instead buys her boring clothes that are a little too big. When they get home, the fridge is nearly empty other than a single tomato and a moldy piece of cheese, so Coraline's mother decides to head to the store to get some groceries, and Coraline asks to stay behind. Once again, she's alone and bored. After reading a book about people from a far-off country and their strange silk dyeing rituals, she gets another idea. She grabs the key to the drawing room door from the kitchen and unlocks it, though something very strange happens this time. Instead of bricks on the other side, the door opens into a dark hallway. Inside is a cold and musty smell, like something very old and very slow. After a moment of looking into the blackness, Coraline walks through the door. She wonders what the empty flat on the other side will be like, but when she finally makes it, it seems oddly familiar. It's got the same carpet and even the same photo in the hallway. Somehow, she ended up back in her own home, as if she never left. A woman then calls her from the kitchen. She looks a little like Coraline's mother, only her fingers are too long and never stop moving, and her dark red fingernails were curled and sharp. The woman turns around, telling her that it's lunchtime, and it's a frightening image. Instead of eyes, she has buttons sewn in their place. She tells Coraline that she's her other mother, and urges her to tell her other father that it's lunchtime. Coraline is put off, as you might expect, but goes along with it, telling her other father it's time to eat. He greets her, saying he's starving, and he too has buttons for eyes. At the kitchen table, they tell Coraline how they've been waiting a long time for her, and other mother serves up a delicious plate of chicken. It's much better than the dry and tasteless stuff Coraline's actual mother makes, and she says she didn't know she had another mother. The woman says, of course she does, everyone does. After lunch, she wonders if Coraline would like to play in her room with the rats from upstairs. Coraline's confused, but goes along upstairs. This is turning out to be an interesting day after all. Her other room is much less boring than her real room, with all kinds of weird objects, like wind-up angels that fly around the room, and picture books with moving pictures. Outside her window, the view is pretty much the same as her normal room. She then sees something run by the corner of her eye and looks under the bed to find a pile of shadowy rats with red eyes. They run out from underneath, and she asks if they can talk, but the largest of them shakes his head no. He's got a crooked smile that's pretty scary. The rats then climb on top of each other and sing in a high, whispery voice. We have teeth and we have nails. We have tails, we have eyes. We were here before you fell, and you will be here when we rise. As Coraline points out, it's not the prettiest song. The rat pyramid suddenly falls apart, and they all scamper to the doorway where the old man from upstairs is standing, now with button eyes. It's kind of terrifying, the rats all climbing the man and hiding in his coats and pockets. One even sits on his head and he just covers it with his hat. He greets Coraline, actually getting her name right this time, and says it's time to feed the rats and she can come watch if she wants. But there's a hungry look in the man's eyes that make her feel uncomfortable, so she says she's gonna play outside and explore instead. As she walks down the hall toward the front door, her other parents just silently watch her, and she tells them she's going out. They say they'll be waiting for her when she returns. Chapter 4. The outside of the house looks exactly the same, except for Miss Pink and Miss Forcible's door, which is all lit up with an extravagant neon sign. Coraline spots the black cat again, only this time the cat can talk and bids her a good afternoon. She says there's a cat just like him in her garden and that he must be the other cat. He seems rather offended by this and says he's not the other cat, he's him. People are spread all over the place. Cats, on the other hand, keep themselves together. She gets what he means, but if he's the same cat, how come he can talk here but not at home? And he says, how would he know? He's only a cat. She asks the cat his name, and he says cats don't have names. People need names because they don't know who they are, but cats know who they are. Coraline finds this to be irritatingly self-centered, but fights the urge to be rude. The cat tells her it was wise of her to bring protection, but she has no idea what he's talking about. Then he vanishes into the woods, leaving Coraline to wonder if all cats can talk in her world but choose not to, or if they can only talk here. Actually, a better question is, where is here? Next, Coraline enters the actress's apartment, where she runs into a talking dog that says he needs a ticket to enter. She tells him she doesn't have one, and annoyed, he leads her in anyway. I guess he's an usher for the show going on. The audience is completely made up of various dogs, and Coraline is shown to her seat as the show begins. Miss Pink and Miss Forcible come out onto the stage juggling and riding a unicycle, and the dogs go wild. Then, in a rather disturbing fashion, the old women's skin fall off their bodies, and underneath, they're young and beautiful, and have black button eyes. Miss Pink pulls out a sharp dagger and requests a volunteer from the audience. The dog next to Coraline lets her know that that's her, and so Coraline makes her way up to the stage. They pretend they don't know her, even though they say her name, and have her stand with the balloon on her head. Pink then blindfolds Forcible and spins her around holding the dagger. She turns and throws it, popping the balloon and pinning the board inches above Coraline's head. The dogs go crazy, and as a reward for helping, the women give Coraline a box of chocolates. The dog next to her says she did great, and Coraline offers him some chocolate, although she thought it wasn't good for dogs. The dog tells her not here, in fact, it's all they eat. Pink and Forcible then start acting out a play, and Coraline gets a little bored. She asks the dog how long this part goes on, and he says, all the time, forever and always. So Coraline gives him the rest of her chocolate and bails out. Outside, her other parents are waiting for her. She tells them this is much more interesting than home, and other mother says she can stay here forever if she likes. Just then, Coraline remembers she has this strange stone in her pocket, and her other father tells her if she wants to stay here, there's only one little thing she has to do. They lead her inside to the kitchen, where, on the table, is a spool of black cotton, a long silver needle, and 2 black buttons. Coraline looks at the other parents and puts 2 and 2 together, telling them she doesn't think so. They try to assure her it doesn't hurt, but Coraline knows by now that when grown-ups tell you something doesn't hurt, it almost always certainly does. She more adamantly tells them no, and the other mother grabs her with her spindly fingers, insisting that she can stay forever. At the same time, Coraline clutches the stone in her pocket, and as if reacting, the other mother removes her hand like a frightened spider. The other parents tell her that they'll see her again soon, and that they can be a big happy family forever and always. Coraline hurries back to the drawing room door and walks through it. As she makes her way to the other side, she could swear there's something behind her, something very old and slow. Finally, she appears back in her own flat on the other side, and turning around, she sees that the doorway is now bricked up once again. Chapter 5. Coraline locks the door back up and notices that her mother still hasn't returned from shopping. She waits up, but eventually it gets dark, and so she makes herself some frozen pizza. Still, her parents don't show. With no supervision, she stays up watching TV until finally, she's just too tired, so she gets into bed and goes to sleep. When she wakes up in the morning, she checks her parents' room, but it's clear that their bed hasn't been slept in, and they're nowhere to be found. She makes herself SpaghettiOs for breakfast, and for lunch she eats some cooking chocolate and an apple. Eventually she wanders down to the old women's flat, and they ask her how her parents are. She straight up tells them they've been missing since yesterday, and they basically don't acknowledge what she just said. It's really unsettling actually, and a common horror trope concerning kids, adults just being aloof and not reacting to strange things. After this, Coraline walks down to the market and buys herself some limeade, a chocolate cake, and a new bag of apples, which she eats for dinner. She takes a bath with too much bubbles, and once again puts herself to bed without her parents. Waking up at 3 in the morning, Coraline goes to her parents' room again, but it's still empty, and this time she can't help but to break down and cry. She climbs into her parents' bed and sobs herself to sleep. Later, Coraline is woken by cold paws batting her face. It's the black cat, and she asks him if he's come to tell her something. Maybe where her parents are? The cat doesn't speak, but instead leads Coraline out of her room and down the hall to a large mirror at the end. Reflected in it are Coraline's parents, sad and alone. She can see her dad speak, but doesn't hear him, and her mother breathes on the glass before writing, "Help us," on the fog. There's only one thing Coraline can think to do. She calls the police and tells them that her parents have been kidnapped, or rather grown-up napped. Of course, the story of her parents being taken into another world by evil doppelgangers sounds ridiculous, and so the person on the line doesn't believe her. Coraline hangs up the phone and walks into the kitchen, where she grabs some candles, her remaining apples, and the key to the drawing room door. She stops at her bedroom to grab the strange stone and heads back to the drawing room. Before entering the door, she tells the cat a story. Once, at her old house, Coraline and her father went on a walk through the dump after she convinced him to let her explore it. They climbed down a hill of trash in their boots, but when they got to the bottom, Coraline's father told her to run back as fast as she could. So she ran back up the hill and felt a sharp pain on her arm. After a minute or so, her dad came charging up the hill and grabbed her. At the bottom was a gang of yellow wasps, and her father stayed behind to let them sting him and give her time to run. In the process, he dropped his glasses and was stung over 39 times. Later, her father needed to go back to get his glasses. He said that he wasn't brave when he stood there getting stung by all those wasps because he wasn't scared. It was all that he could do at that moment. But going back to get the glasses when he knew the wasps were there, when he was really scared, that was brave. She concludes the story by saying that bravery is when you're scared but you do it anyway, and enters the door into the darkness between worlds. Coraline puts out her hand as she walks through the dark and feels something wispy like a spider web brush her hands and face. At the end of the corridor, a light comes on, and the eerie silhouette of Other Mother is standing there calling to her, asking why she ran away. Too close to stop herself, Coraline walks through the door and into the cold embrace of Other Mother, who tells her that they're here to love her and make her life interesting. She pulls away from the woman and looks into the hallway mirror, but doesn't see her parents. Instead, just her own sad reflection. And she tells herself to be brave. The Other Father offers to make her a meal, but Coraline says she brought herself a snack and pulls out one of her apples. Other Mother smiles, and each of her teeth is a tiny bit too long. The art here is creepy as hell. Coraline tells them that they don't frighten her, even though they actually do very much, and demands she get her real parents back. Other Mother acts like she doesn't know what Coraline's talking about and says maybe they left because they got bored of you, but she on the other hand would never become bored of Coraline. Coraline calls her a liar, but Other Mother says she can prove it and waves her hand in front of the hallway mirror. On the other side, Coraline's parents walk in the front door as if coming back from holiday and saying how nice it is that they don't have Coraline anymore. Now they can do whatever they want without her getting in the way, and they take comfort in knowing Other Mother will take good care of her. Coraline says she doesn't believe it, and looking at Other Mother's face, it was clear that this was just an illusion. Coraline sits to eat her apple while the woman tells her not to be difficult, and then summons one of her rats to go and fetch the key to the door from the other side. It soon returns with it, and Other Mother then locks the door back to Coraline's world. Coraline wonders why they don't have their own key on this side, and Other Father says that there's only one key and one door. But before he says more, Mother shushes him and walks him out of the room, telling Coraline it's time for bed. Coraline's really tired, but doesn't want to sleep under the same roof as this woman, so she goes outside and sits alone looking out into the fog. Then the black cat appears. He tells her that the type of thing that Other Mother is loves games and challenges, and suggests that Coraline challenge her. He then warns her not to stay out here, and so Coraline creeps into the house and into her other room. After a quick rat check under the bed, she climbs in and falls asleep. Chapter 6. Coraline wakes up rather confused until she remembers where she is. She doesn't want to wear pajamas during the day, but is uncomfortable wearing the other Coraline's clothes. After a moment of reassuring herself that there is no other Coraline and that she's the only one, she opens the wacky wardrobe and picks out an outfit, remembering to swap out her remaining apple and stone as well. Downstairs, she finds Other Father in his office. She asks him where Other Mother went, and he says she's fixing the door to keep vermin out. Apparently, she doesn't mean the rats either, but actually the black cat. Looking closer at Other Father, he looks off. Not just the button eyes, his skin is discolored, and it seems like dough that's on the cusp of rising. This image is one of the creepiest in the comic to me because he's just slightly off. A good example of the uncanny valley effect. He says he really shouldn't be talking to her while Mother isn't around, and after refusing to answer her questions, Coraline says she's gonna go explore. But before she leaves, Other Father tells her some more info. He says this is all she made: the house, the grounds, and the people in the house. He just shushes Coraline when she asks questions, so she finally leaves. She tries the drawing room door, but of course it's locked, and then she notices something different in the room. Something she never noticed on the other side. A snow globe is sitting atop the mantle with two little people in it. Coraline can't make them out and shakes it, sending the snow tumbling through the water. Then she puts it down and continues searching for her parents. She walks outside and passes by the neon door, where Miss Pink and Forcible perform their show forever, and sets off into the woods. Something strange happens. The further she travels away from the house, the more the world becomes lower resolution. This is represented with the art style becoming more crude as she walks. Eventually, she's surrounded by mist, and then nothing. like the world is gone. The black cat shows up again and tells Coraline this is the place outside, the part she hasn't bothered to create. Coraline says he must be wrong. She can see a building up ahead, but when she gets close, she realizes this is simply the house. It must be a small world to be able to walk all the way around it and end up back where you started. The cat says it's big enough for other mother. Spiderwebs only have to be big enough to catch flies. As they speak, a rat scutters by and the cat pounces on it, informing Coraline that the rats are spies for Mother. After playing with it for a bit, the cat finally grabs it and runs off, and Coraline heads back into the house. She looks into the hallway mirror again when Other Mother comes up behind her, and funny enough, the frightening woman doesn't have a reflection. Other Mother then offers Coraline a snack in the form of little crawling beetles, and Coraline just calls her sick, evil, and weird. Other Mother keeps suggesting fun things they could do together, and Coraline rejects them all. The woman scarfs down some more beetles and then finally tells Coraline it's time to teach her some manners. She grabs the girl by the wrist and drags her over to the mirror. Then, using a key, the mirror opens like a door, and Other Mother throws Coraline inside where it's pitch dark. Chapter 7. Coraline reaches around in the darkness, looking for a way out, and can feel the presence of others next to her. Then a voice tells her to keep quiet or the beldam will hear her. Realizing these figures aren't a threat, she asks who they are, but they can't remember their names. She hears a terrible sadness in their voices and reaches out to grab one of their hands. As Coraline's eyes adjust to the dark, she sees the ghosts of 3 other children, all from different time periods. One actually looks like a fairy for some reason. But it seems Other Mother captured them and stole their souls, leaving them here in the dark. They warn Coraline to flee while she has the chance, but she says she's not running away. So the poor ghosts ask Coraline to help them by finding their souls so they can finally be free. Though at the moment, she's trapped in here. Coraline tries to get comfortable laying on the floor and eats her last apple, but she's still hungry. She starts to drift off when one of the children whispers in her ear telling her to look through the stone. And finally, she falls asleep. Chapter 8. Eventually, Other Mother shows up in the dark room, looking healthier than before, her hair wiggling like lazy snakes and her button eyes freshly polished. She picks Coraline up and carries her out into the kitchen. Coraline, still half asleep, almost welcomes the embrace until she realizes who it is. Other Mother then talks sweetly to her, saying she just needed to be taught a lesson is all, and now hopefully she'll be a good child that obeys her mother. Coraline ignores her motherly BS and mentions the kids she saw in the room, and how she thinks Other Mother plans on turning her into one. Other Mother just says she's being crazy, and no one sensible believes in ghosts anyway. She makes a cheese omelet, and Coraline says that she's heard that Other Mother likes games. The woman says of course she does, so does everyone, and Coraline point blank asks if she'd be happier winning her fair and square. Other Mother stops suddenly and wriggles her fingers on the counter in interest, asking Coraline what she had in mind. Coraline offers a game. If she loses, Other Mother can have her. She'll be an obedient daughter who loves her back. But if Coraline wins, then Other Mother must let her and her parents go. The dreadful woman says she likes the game. But what kind of game is it? And Coraline says it's an exploring game. She'll win if she finds her parents and the souls of the children in the mirror. Other Mother thinks it over for a moment and finally agrees. It's a deal. Coraline isn't sure she can trust her, but she swears on her right hand, and that's good enough for now, I suppose. Coraline wolfs down the omelet, hungrier than she thought, and begins her search. She decides not to look outside since the garden and grounds didn't really exist, only the house. After a disappointing look around the kitchen, she asks Other Mother how big souls are anyway, but she doesn't respond and just taps her button eye with her sharp nail until she suddenly disappears, leaving Coraline alone and shivering. She prefers for Other Mother to have a location. If she's nowhere, that means she could be anywhere. Coraline walks out into the hall and looks into the mirror. For a brief moment, she thinks she sees her parents again, but then it's just her reflection. She pulls out the strange stone from her pocket and finds that it glows green in the mirror, and a trail of green fire blows from it, drifting toward her bedroom. Coraline runs up to her room, dumping out the toy chest, but none of them look particularly soul-like. As she does this, we can see a small marble fall out and roll to the other side of the room, but Coraline doesn't notice. She pulls out the stone once again and is struck with a memory of the ghost whispering in her ear. With the advice in mind, she looks through the hole in the stone, where the world has turned gray, except for a small round object in the corner that glows red like fire. As Coraline holds the marble in her hand, a voice whispers in her mind. It's that of a ghost child. This is his soul, and he warns her that the beldam is already angry. While in her other room, Coraline decides she doesn't want to do this in the clothes created by Other Mother, and switches back to her pajamas, which she was wearing when she came in. She leaves the house, walking around until she reaches Miss Pink and Miss Forcible's flat and goes inside. The place is dark dark, and Coraline finds a flashlight on the floor. Though when she turns it on, she sees something hanging from the ceiling. Dozens of dog bats, literally dogs with bat wings. She points the light away from them and makes her way to the stage where the two women once performed. Coraline sees something large and gooey floating backstage. She approaches it, and it's almost like a large clear sack with two women inside, though their bodies are malformed and conjoined. Using her stone, Coraline peers through where she sees something glowing inside the palm of one of the women's hands. Reluctantly, Coraline reaches into the slimy sack and pulls the marble out of the stiff, clamped fingers. Now getting a closer look, she thinks the women look like younger versions of Pink Enforceable, and as she investigates, the figures spring to life and scream out, calling her a thief. The women wriggle around, but are still stuck in the floating sack. However, they call upon the dog bats to capture the thief. A ghost girl appears in Coraline's mind, telling her that she's freed two of them now, and Coraline slips the ball in her pocket as she runs toward the exit, barely making it out alive. Chapter 9. Back outside, Coraline is confronted by Other Mother, or the Beldam if you prefer. She just stares at Coraline with her button eyes. She offers a hint to the girl, who at first refuses, but the Beldam tells her in order to get into the empty flat and look around, she'll need a key. Disgustingly, she regurgitates a key and hands it to Coraline before once again vanishing. The ghost boy speaks to her again, saying this must be a trick, the Beldam doesn't mean her well, and Coraline agrees, but she still enters the empty flat. Inside, it's so quiet that Coraline feels compelled to whistle. She walks through the kitchen and past the bathroom where she sees a dead spider in the tub the size of a cat. Finally, in an empty bedroom, she finds something, a trap door. As she opens it, she's hit with a sickening smell like sour vinegar. She climbs down into a cellar that's filled with rubbish. In the center is a pile of papers resting on top of something. It's a body. Looking closer, it's clear that this is Other Father, though his body has gone pale white and looks like it's made of some kind of dough. He sits up upon seeing her and speaks her name through his gooey mouth. It's an unsettling sight to say the least. Despite Other Father's monstrous form, he also looks pretty miserable. Coraline realizes that he must have been placed here as a punishment for telling her too much information. He's just a thing that the Beldam made and threw away. He stands up, and as he does, one of his eyes pops off. Then he warns Coraline to run, saying that the Beldam is pushing him to hurt her and keep her here. Coraline tells him to fight her and that he can be brave. There's a pause, and then in a truly terrifying moment, he simply says, he cannot, and lunges at her. With only a heartbeat of reaction time, Coraline grabs his other button eye and rips it off, blinding him. The monster rushes around the room, trying to capture her, but she's already made her way to the stairs to leave. She quietly tiptoes up the steps, but one of the boards creaks, alerting the monster, who immediately starts climbing the stairs toward her. Okay, this might be the scariest sequence in this whole book. Coraline manages to get to the top and slam the trapdoor down before he can get to her. She takes a deep breath and heads back outside, gaining nothing for her efforts. Chapter 10. There's only one place left to look at this point, the top flat where the old man lived. Inside, she finds the place a complete mess, and the red-eyed rats are everywhere. Coraline takes note of the fact it smells like rotten food, and then a voice calls to her from the back of the flat. Mustering all of her bravery, Coraline tells herself not to be afraid. These things, even Other Father, were illusions, made by Other Mother, who can only twist things and distort what already exists. This makes her remember the snow globe and how it didn't exist in her world, making her realize where her parents were. The voice, which Coraline describes as sounding like an enormous dead bug, calls out again, saying, "Come here, little girl." In the back sits what looks like the old man. He asks her what'll happen if she wins the game. She'll go home only to be ignored and to be bored. He tells her to stay here with them, where at least they get her name right. The man's face is obscured except a red eye peering through the shadow. Coraline asks, if she stays here, will there be foggy, boring days that drag on forever, or awful meals cooked up from odd recipes? The man says no, only the best meals and days of sunshine. Coraline explains that she doesn't want everything whenever she wants it. What kind of fun would that be? The old man doesn't understand, and Coraline says it's because he's only a bad copy. She looks through the rock once again and sees a glowing light coming from the pocket of the old man. She takes one brave step forward, and suddenly the man falls apart. He He was simply a coat filled with rats, and the pockets are empty. Using her rock again, she tracks down the sparkling thing, which is now being held by the biggest rat in the room. She runs toward it while the other rats try and distract and trip her, and the big rat runs out of the flat completely. Coraline chases the rodent outside, where the house itself is starting to change and become less distinct, like the trees in the garden when she walked too far away. Because of this, she trips on the warped steps and skins her knee, as well as losing track of the rat. Breaking down in defeat, Coraline buries her crying face in her hands and says she's failed her parents and the ghost children. But then she hears a sound. It's the black cat who has just captured and killed the rat. Coraline leans down and picks up the last marble, the final soul of the 3 children. This ghost tells Coraline that the beldam has lied to her. She will never willingly give her up. The hairs on Coraline's neck stand up, but she kind of already knew that this was true. The cat looks frightened and points to the house, which seems to be dissolving, becoming lower and lower resolution. Coraline asks the cat if this is a bad thing, and he doesn't respond. Instead, he trembles. So Coraline picks him up, saying the only way out is past Other Mother, and she heads back inside. Chapter 11. The flat seems to be disappearing slowly like the rest of the house, but for now, it still has depth and shadows. Other Mother walks out and asks why Coraline brought vermin with her, then says she loves Coraline, who replies, "You have a funny way of showing it," and walks into the drawing room, still holding the cat, and pretending she doesn't feel Other Mother's button eyes watching her. The drawing room is still here, but the world outside the window is gone. The woman follows her in and is getting impatient, asking Coraline where they are, referring to the soul marbles, I suppose. Coraline shows them to Other Mother, but pulls them back before the lady's crooked fingers can grab them, and says they aren't done yet. She still needs to find her parents. Trying not to look at the mantle, she tells Other Mother she believes that her parents are hidden in the passage between worlds, and with an evil smirk, Other Mother pulls out the key to the door and opens it, showing how wrong Coraline is. She laughs at the girl, saying now she'll stay here with her forever. Coraline yells at her she's not, and in a shocking twist throws the black cat, then rushes over to the mantle to grab the snow globe. The cat scratches the shit out of the button-eyed lady's face, which produces a tarry black blood, and in the meantime, Coraline opens the passage again, calling for the cat to come with. They run inside, the Other Mother hot on their tail, and Coraline starts to close the door on her. But Other Mother's pale hand with its long sharp fingers reaches in, nearly clawing Coraline's face off. The little girl almost gives up hope when 3 pairs of ghostly hands reach out and help her close the door with a bang. Something drops from the air and bounces off the floor, but it's too dark to see what. The cat yells for Coraline to hurry up, and they start running through while the walls of the corridor begin closing in. Whatever this passage is far older than Other Mother. It's deep and slow, and it knows that Coraline's there. Running as fast as she can, she makes it back into her own flat and slams the door shut behind her. She apologizes to the cat for throwing him, but it was their only shot at getting out of there. Though he can't talk in this world, it seems he understands, and he sits on her lap as they both take in the golden sun, which feels very real. Chapter 12. After drifting off to sleep for some time, Coraline's mother, her real mother, wakes her up. Coraline hugs her as hard as she can, and her mother tells her dinner will be ready in 15. She also sends Coraline to change out of her pajamas, which were torn up. So she goes into her real bedroom and empties her pockets, which contain the key, stone, and the globe, which was now empty. Afterwards, she goes downstairs to find her father in his office as usual, but this time she says nothing and simply gives him a kiss. Then, for no reason at all, he picks her up like he hadn't done in years and carries her into the kitchen. Dinner is her father's homemade pineapple pizza, and delighted to be back in the real world, Coraline eats every bite. Well, except for the pineapple. And afterward, totally exhausted, goes to bed. While she sleeps, she has a dream where she finds the 3 kids whose souls she freed. Though here, they are alive and happy, and they all spend the day playing games and having a picnic. They say it's all over and done for them. From here, they'll set out for uncharted lands, and what comes after, no one alive can say. But before they do, they warn her that the beldam has never lost anything for so long and hates Coraline. For her, it isn't over yet. Be wise and be brave. She sees the children off and falls into a dark sleep. Then Coraline wakes up in the early hours of the morning to a strange sound. Is it a rat? Alarmingly, her doorknob starts shaking as if someone is trying to open it, and Coraline tells them to leave or they'll be sorry. There's a pause, and whatever it is scuttles away down the hall. Coraline leaves the room and looks through the house, opening the front door and looking out into the night. Then, out from behind her, jumps the right hand of Other Mother, which was torn off when Coraline shut the door on it. It jumps past her and runs out into the night. It's clear that it's here to get the key, and let the rest of itself out from the other side. Chapter 13. Coraline's parents didn't seem to remember anything about their time in the snow globe, and she wondered if they ever noticed that they lost 2 days of their life, but they're not the type to keep track of that sort of thing anyway. Miss Pink and Miss Forcible read Coraline's tea leaves again, and this time everything looks good. Well, almost everything. She can't quite make out an image in the tea that looks kind of like a hand with sharp fingers. She talks to the old man upstairs, who says that the mice are frightened by something. He thinks there may be a weasel in the house. The remaining days of summer, Coraline spends on edge, watching her back and carrying the key around her neck for safekeeping, even in the bath. Then one night she hears something scratching at her window and gets up to see the white hand crawling along the outside of the house trying to get in. In the morning, Coraline says she's going to have a picnic with her dolls, asking her mother for a tablecloth to use. She then goes outside and finds the old well. She removes the boards covering it and carefully lays the tablecloth across the top, placing cups of water around the edges to keep it taut. Heading back to the house, she pulls off the key from her neck and swings it around blatantly. She checks in on Miss Pink and Forcible to see how their dogs are doing, and in the process learns that the man upstairs' name is Mr. Bobo, something she wished she knew sooner so she could have been saying it every chance she got. She loudly tells Miss Pink that she's going to play with her dolls now, and continues swinging the key in plain view of anyone who might see. As she walks back to the woods, white fingers reach up from the grass and start following her. Back at the picnic, she lays the key in the center of the tablecloth, and now it was all up to the hand. Coraline walks away from the picnic to pretend she's getting some more tea for her dolls, and with her back turned, the creepy hand comes crawling between the trees and finally leaps up into the air and right toward the key. Of course, the well lay beneath, and the weight and momentum of the hand's jump sends it falling below along with the key. Coraline counts 40 seconds when she finally hears a splash below and then covers the well back up. As she gathers her dolls, the black cat shows up once more and seems to give her a wink. Back at the house, Coraline runs into Mr. Bobo, who tells her the mice are almost ready for their first show, and she stops at the old woman's flat to give them back their stone, saying it probably saved her life. That night, Coraline lays in bed, thinking about the first day of school, which would normally make her nervous, but after what she's been through, there's nothing scary about it. As she drifts off to sleep, she swears she can hear sweet music in the night that can only be played on tiny silver instruments. And that, my friends, is Coraline the graphic novel. So what did you guys think of this version? One of the things I really like about this story is the almost eldritch or cosmic horror undertones. On the surface, it kind of feels like a horror version of Narnia or something, but the intentionally vague descriptions of Beldam leave the creature and its motives a mystery. That's not to mention whatever the hell the thing is in the corridor between worlds. It's a great example of using what we don't know to keep us freaked out. As I said, I've never read the original story, so I'll be counting on you guys to tell me any major differences in the comments. Shout out to Kill Me Katie as always for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And if you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me a submission to the address below with a name or social media handle. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.